All right, today, threw up a little bit. Today we're training. This is another exercise I see a lot of people screw up. Let me show you what I mean by failure. I don't work out because I love it. I work out because I'm so angry if I don't work out. Recently, I've trained with a few people, which isn't normal for me because I hate people, but in doing so, I realize there's a lot of things I do during training, different tweaks to exercises, changing the form, changing the angle, that for me makes the workout worth a shit. So I figured you'd probably find it useful as well. Pre-workout Cialis. First, I have to eat. Typical breakfast, 10 egg whites, like a half cup of oats, tablespoon honey, that's it. It's gonna digest as quick as possible. There's no fat in this meal, so that's not gonna slow anything down. There's 50 grams of protein, so you're gonna reach that leucine threshold. You've been basically fasting all night, and it's delicious. Someone asked me the other day about SARMs. I've never even looked into them. I have no idea what they are. So it's gonna take me 2 months to research them, find the ones with the highest efficacy and won't kill me, take them, and then I'll report back. Seem interesting though. I have no recommendations for supplements yet. I still have to get the HPLC to a lab. And the way it works is you have to buy standards to test against. So for example, for protein, I have to buy every single individual amino acid on top of things that companies typically use to spike protein. And that's just what they consider quantification. How much of the actual ingredient that they say is in there is in there. There's other ways to test quality. It's a pain in the dick. So don't think these are good because I have no idea. I should get in there before I work out, but I'm not going to. How much I warm up is usually dictated by how awful I feel on that particular day. For back, there's not really a lot that I do other than this rhomboid movement that really gets me used to pulling my shoulders back and working with my scapulas, or scapulae for you dorks. One of my favorite movements to start out with is standing pullovers. Now, most people really lean forward on these, which I think is a mistake. Based on the natural scapulohumeral rhythm of your shoulder, as your arm starts to raise, after a certain point, your trap will take over the responsibility of flexion. Pair that with the fact that the further the load is away from your body, the more your traps have to engage to counteract the weight. That's why I do them almost straight up. There's a slight bend, but really it's just to make sure I can depress those scaps, punch forward with my serratus anterior, and flex it down with the actual lat. Less stretch, but it also stays in your lat. It's not in your upper traps. One thing that I'm sure I'm gonna get pushback on is that a set doesn't count for me unless I push myself to failure. It doesn't matter if it's a set of 20 or a set of 10, 8, whatever. I train to failure. So I don't leave any reps in reserve, and I get it. I've seen the studies. If you're an untrained person, then yeah, you're gonna get just as good as results. But if you're untrained, you have no idea what a set to failure even looks like. So you're probably, instead of getting 4 RIR, you're probably more like 7 because you're half-assed in every single set. And the only reason I'm so adamant about training to failure is because even if you look at like the best exercise scientists in the world, like a Brad Schoenfeld, if you watch him train, his failure is
good. All the way to failure. There we go, all the way to failure.
That's my failure, man. It's tough to watch. So it makes you wonder how many of these people that are in these studies about training to failure versus RIR, reps in reserve, how many of those people are actually getting anywhere close? Let me show you what I mean by failure. I'll do another set. Yep. So like on that one, I got 19 reps. I did 3 or 4 more partials in a lengthened position. I don't count those, but I'm not gonna stop going just because I can't get it all the way down. I'm gonna make sure I push to complete failure because those last 3 or 4 reps are probably even more important than the first 19. The main thing I want you to focus on with these is as you're going into the eccentric, I want you to feel like you're pushing away from you the entire time. So serratus anterior is engaged, that's flex, and as you go, you push away and flex, and really at the top, driving, and you should feel serratus anterior in this lower part of your lats, down where they originate. You should feel that connect a lot more than the typical throwing up and down, which really does. You'll feel it deep into the insertion point, but you won't really get that nice pump in the lower part of your lat. And I know you dickheads are giving me a hard time about saying lower lats, but where they originate, whatever you want to say. Another question is, well, how do I know the rep range? Should I go 6 to 8? Should I go 15, 20? A lot of it has to do with the exercise itself. I guarantee if you're trying to do sets of 6 in the standing pullovers, you're screwing it up. But on an exercise like these one-arm landmine rows, The benefit of these is you can load your lat at length. So you can manipulate your body in a way that as you're going into the eccentric, you're working against and forcing that lat to stretch even more and then contract it up. For me, the contraction's almost an afterthought on these. Hold on, I need some of my special drink. What's in here is 2 scoops isolate, Pedialyte. You can always use Gatorade powder, but I think this is delicious. 3-ish tablespoons of honey, 10 grams creatine. Every time I start to sweat, these things fall off. Do you guys watch Mark Bell's podcast? He asked me to go on that. What am I gonna do? Just regurgitate all the case studies I've read over the past 2 years? That's not interesting. I need a good conspiracy theory. Come on. Oh God, fuck this thing. I'll try to get a top-down view for the last set because I know it doesn't look like much. It's a very short range of motion, but most of the magic happens on that stretch. So make sure you're actively working against. You're actually kind of twisting away from that stretch. Also, side note, can we stop letting kids take their shirt off and flex in the gym? Every time I go to a commercial gym, there's always these 12-year-old kids that have no business flexing in front of the mirror, doing poses. I know Arnold made it popular and Sam emboldened these kids to do it just nonstop, but if you want to check your progress, do it like every other adult male, and when you go home and masturbate in the bathroom, take your shirt off and you see a new vein popping out of your neck, congratulations, you're making progress. Chuck's late for work, hold on. What are we doing? Chuck, why were you late? Next up, lat pull down. I'm gonna do a couple sets with the traditional wide bar because the wider your hands go, the less you have to worry about your biceps. So all I have to focus on is what my scapula is doing. If it's raising up, then obviously I'm shrugging and it's jumping into my traps and I'm not actually stretching my lat. So my focus is depress those scaps, force the stretch, but make sure it doesn't get elevated. The moment your shoulders push up, your traps fire and it's not even in your lats anymore. A couple years back, I tore maybe quite a few muscles in my back and got nerve damage and all this shit just from a disc. I couldn't do that exercise before because my shoulder would go so high up. It's still a little messed up. I'm sure you could probably see it, but at least I can fire them both equally and they're actually both growing because at one point I couldn't even lift myself off the ground with this arm. BPC, TB500, that got it kind of functioning, less pain, stem cells. That actually got the nerves firing. Now this side is probably my good side, which is crazy because not only did it affect my lat, my shoulder on this side, this tricep and this pec could not fire at all. There's nothing worse than not being able to train. I don't know about you, but I don't work out because I love it. I work out because I'm so angry if I don't work out. I'll film my scaps at a different angle on this last one so you can see it, but what I'm trying to do is depress them the whole entire time, and as I go into the eccentric, I'm actually trying to drive those elbows forward. That's gonna help flare the lat even more, force more of a stretch, but also make sure that I'm not just hanging there. If I wanted to do that, I would just do a hanging stretch. I want loaded tension, that's where the actual growth happens. Might as well turn this into a Q&A. The biggest mistake I see with the V-bar handle is most people pull directly down. Obviously, when you do that, you can see the angle of my actual elbow. That's a lot of bicep. The only way I can actually get it down is with my bicep. My lat is basically done working if I pull that high. That's, again, good upper traps, rhomboids, that's nice, but at that point, you should just shrug it and not pull it the rest of the way down. Again, on these, you're trying to keep those elbows as fixed as possible. You're driving forward, pushing those scaps along the side of your rib cage, driving, squeezing back. So there's tilting going on at the hips. Because if I just stay straight up and down, I have to use a lot of biceps. So drive forward, lean back. How many shits do you take a day? I shit after every single meal, so 5 to 6 a day. I mean, it's within the last bite. And if we have a cheat meal, it is halfway through the cheat meal. Blow up their bathroom, come back, finish the other pizza. Here's another good one, actually very poignant. What's your 4 staple back exercise? I would say some of these actually are a staple. I always do some sort of lat pull down and a pullover movement. Today I did cables, but a lot of times I do dumbbells. That way I can focus on one side at a time and see what shoulder's screwed up, and it's not allowing me to really stretch and feel it in my lat, because you always have one side, especially if you're doing barbells, you'll notice your elbow kicks out more than the other one and you can't really connect to your lat. It's your shoulder's fault. I always do something that loads the lat. Today it was the single arm landmine row. At a commercial gym, I'll always do the ISO row, one at a time there, really forcing the stretch. Last one is always some sort of high elbow row, because most people do a lot of lats and even some spinal erector exercises, you know, heavy rows, things like that, but most people forget the rhomboids, the mid traps, the things that actually make your back look nice and thick from the side. So I always put in some sort of high row. Today I'm gonna just do dumbbells on the incline bench, but all gyms have a great high row machine. Like the T-bar with the pad on it, phenomenal. Someone just asked when the new program's coming out. They're all in the app. I just had a new full 12-week one in there. The premise of that one is all about pushing yourself to complete failure. They're straight sets. There's not a lot of drop sets, supersets, because in reality, if you look at the research of those, a lot of that has to do with collapsing time, not necessarily producing more hypertrophy. Another interesting question was, what's the most important diet factor for growth? I think up until a couple of years ago, I would have said, just make sure you're hitting your protein numbers. But if you know how to utilize carbohydrates correctly, and you don't have to take insulin or anything like that, you just have to know how to time them around your workouts, your body will actually prime itself to be able to uptake those carbohydrates. I had no idea how effective a intra-workout, post-workout drink was. I would just kind of fuck off until I ate my next meal. Game-changing results. Now, I've talked about this in the past, but hopefully the most important thing you could take away from this video, other than how to check your progress by masturbating in the bathroom, if you don't control your scapula, you're not gonna hit the muscle you're trying to target. It's gonna fuck off and go someplace else. And this exercise is a great example of this, because I see a lot of people really trying to force the stretch, exaggerate it. And this is what I used to do in the past too, and I thought it was brilliant. It's not. It's dumb. Scaps should be depressed, and you should be pushing those along your rib cage, so it should feel like you're doing a lat spread. So you're just pushing your lats out, and that's stretching those mid traps, those rhomboids, and then you contract it back in. It's not a big movement. You're not gonna get this crazy deep stretch unless you screw it up. Here's another interesting one. High school coach, 13 to 17-year-olds, what would you tell your younger self? I'm pretty sure you don't want my answer, because it's probably not what you think. I feel pretty lucky. I don't envy too many people, other than the people that can sell pictures of their butthole online and podcasters. There's nothing else I'd rather do. I sold real estate, I sold insurance, I was an EMT. I was a fuck up, and I failed at all of those until I actually found what I'd love to do, which is learning as much as I can about a topic and then teaching it. So I guess my advice would be, find something that you are completely obsessed with, learn as much as you can about it, and take that and use it to help other people. Somebody asked about merch. I know I've said like 20 times I'm gonna come out with shirts with all the sayings on them. If any of you have a connection, that would be great, because most of the people in that industry suck. I think there's a huge demographic of people that aren't represented in the gym. You got your, whatever it's called, dark sport, you have your wolf clothing, then you got the gym sharks, and you got all the douchey clothing brands that I wanna make merch for people that hate those people. That's my goal. If you can help, reach out. Then I can make a bunch of ads going to regular gyms and kicking over people's tripods. Gym clothes for the everyman, who probably struggles with alcoholism and maybe a sex addiction or two. Those are my kind of people. My wife's got the Versa grips in her car, so now I have America strap. America! I'm gonna finish up by working up to heavy sets of bent over rows, and then probably making those last 2 or 3 sets either drop or rest pause. Whatever feels like a dumber idea in the moment. Again, does the research show that drop sets or rest pause sets are more beneficial for hypertrophy? No. It just collapse time and allow you to get more work in. So if you're like me and you're hungry as shit right now, it helps. This is another exercise I see a lot of people screw up, and it isn't for a lack of trying. They They mean well. They lack the hamstring flexibility and hip mobility, so they really can't load their back correctly. They go to get in that stretch position, but they have so much tightness that they end up rolling their lower back, and it's awful. If you can't hinge at the hips to a point where you can keep your back nice and straight, then you're not gonna be able to load this exercise correctly. And eventually you're probably gonna grow a little tail. America! Post-workout, finish this shake, and then about 45 minutes later, I eat the same exact meal as before. Unless I want to be a piece of shit, order some Potbelly. A couple of delicious Sammys. Here's the exact workout if you want to try it yourself. And if you like this style of video, let me know and I'll make more of these videos where you follow me around like a creep. And as always, the app's linked below. There's a free 7-day trial, so if you want more workouts like this, or continue to be a chubby mess, I don't care.